morning. So I hope you guys are having a good day, and I hope that everybody is behaving like they should be. Just a reminder that if I get a good report from the substitute, then you get goodies on Monday. And if you were good yesterday, you get goodies for yesterday as well. So you have the potential of getting goodies 2 days for next week. Alright, so today we are going to talk about square roots and right triangles. So the first part of our lesson deals just with square roots. So before we get into that, I want to start talking about what a perfect square is. And you guys should already know perfect squares from previous math courses, but we're going to go ahead and write them down again, just in case we need to. Alright, so perfect square means to multiply a number by itself. So 1 squared would be 1 times 1, which is 1. 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. 3 squared, 9. 4 squared, 16. 5 squared, 25. See if you can get the next 3. 6 squared, 7 squared, and 8 squared. Alright, so hopefully you got 6 squared was 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. Keep going. 9 squared, 10 squared, 11 squared, and 12 squared. Alright, so 9 squared is 81. 10 squared, good, 100. 11 squared, 121. 12 squared is 144. Alright, now the next one's our last set. 13 squared, 14 squared, and 15 squared. So the state expects you guys to know all the way up to 15 squared. Now remember, if you get into binds, don't worry about it. Grab your calculator and multiply. So 13 squared would be 13 times 13. Alright, so let's finish up. 13 squared is 169. 14 squared, 196, and 15 squared is 225. Alright, so that's your list of perfect squares. Let me zoom out for just a little bit and make sure you got them all copied down. Okay, how do you undo a perfect square? I'm hoping you just said, take a square root. Alright, so let's think back for a minute. When I gave you x squared equals 25, and we talked about how to undo a squared, when we did finding the radius of a circle, when I had given you area. So you take something called a square root. And you would get the square root of 25, we know, is 5. Again, if you've forgotten, grab your calculator. Right here on this top row, this one right here is your square root button. So you hit 25, and then you press the shift button and the square root button. Alright, we're good? Okay, so example 1. Find each square root. And this is going to match your classwork problems number 1 through 12. So if you get stuck on classwork, you now have an example as to where you need to go to find it. Okay? So find each square root. Number 1, square root of 36. And number 2, we're going to take the square root of 196. So if you remember your perfect squares, this is very easy. If you get stuck, use your calculator. Alright, so 36 is a perfect square, so the square root of 36 is 6. Okay, the way I did it is I looked up here, here's 36, so it's 6 squared. 196, so I look for 196, here it is, the square root is 14. Or, I say, you know what, I don't remember my chart, I'm a little confused. I grab my calculator, I type in 196, shift square root, ta-da, 14. Alright, let's try the next few. Let's take the negative square root of 100. Sorry, that should be number 3. Number 4, let's do the square root of 4 over 81. Now, this negative outside just means take the opposite of your answer. So, we take the opposite of the square root of 100. The square root of 100 is 10. So my answer would be negative 10. Now, don't let the fractions bother you. You're going to take the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. So we take the square root of 4 and then the square root of 81. So square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 81 is 9. Okay, let's try 2 more and then we'll be done with this example. Let's take the negative of the square root of 144 over, let's do 64. And then for number 6, we're going to take the square root of 0.81. Alright, so let's do number 5. Go ahead and separate it. Your numerator would be the square root of 144. Your denominator is the square root of 64. Alright, so I get the square root of 144 over the square root of 64. Now, I forgot my little negative, so let me put that out front so I don't forget it. Alright, let's go through it. What's the square root of 144? 12. What's the square root of 64? 8. Now, can I leave it 12 over 8? Is that in lowest terms? Nope. So let's go ahead and do it. So let's see, 8 and 12 have 4 in common. So I get negative 3 over 2. So I don't want you to reduce here. I want you to go ahead and take the square roots and reduce at the very end. Okay? Alright, number 6. Let's take the square root of 0.81. Alright? Now, on the decimal, let's just go ahead and type it into our calculator. It'll be easier. So type 0.81. Now hit your shift square root, and you get 0.9. Alright? So again, when you get your classwork, if you get stuck, this is examples 1 through 12. Okay? Alright, next one. Let's talk about how to find square roots when they're not perfect squares. So example 2, find each square root. Round to the nearest tenth. Alright, so we're going to find the square root. This time they are not perfect squares. So don't freak out. It's not a big deal. You got a calculator, let's use it. Alright, so if I want the square root of 91, I type in 91, shift, square root, and I get 9.53939, blah, 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 blah. Rational or irrational? I'm hoping you guys said irrational. Because it doesn't stop and it doesn't repeat. The only reason it stops on your calculator is your calculator just runs out of screen. What's the square root of 64? Rational or irrational? And I'm sure you guys all said rational, so spectacular. Alright, so we're rounding to the nearest tenth. So in my tens place is a 5. I look one behind him is a 3. Is the 3 high enough to change the 5? Nope. So my answer is 9.5. So these are just as simple as typing them into your calculator and taking the square root. Alright, number 2, the negative square root of 22. So first thing I'm going to do is put that negative sign so I don't lose sight of it. Now type in 22, shift square root. Now 4.69, again, irrational number. So it's either going to be 4.6 or go to 4.7. This 9 is big enough to make it 4.7. Okay? This is your classwork, let me look, 13 through 20. So if you get stuck on those, look back at this example. So far, so good. Alright, for the next thing I want you to do is I want you to draw a number line. Here's 0. Let's go -7. Up to 7. All right, we're going to name the two numbers. Name the two numbers. Each square root must lie between. Name the two numbers each square root must lie between. Alright, I'm going to try to keep my line down so you can see. So let's say I want to take the square root of, 38. Okay, again, 38 is not a perfect square, so this is going to be an irrational number. Alright, step 1. Take the square root of 38 on your calculator. Alright, so I got 6.164414003. So let's call it 6.2. Okay? Now look at your number line. I want to know, where does 6.2 lie between? So he's a positive number. He'd be somewhere in this range, correct? So he lies between 6 and 7. So your answer is 6 and 7. That's your answer. Alright, let's try another one. How about if I take the square root of 200 and, now let's just do the square root of 21. Because we've got our number line. Then we'll try one without the number line. Alright, so first take your square root. I got 4.5825, so I'm going to round that to 4.6. Look at your number line. Let's figure out where 4.6 goes. So again, we're positive. We're right in this range. So we're between, we're right here. So the numbers we're between are 4 and 5. So far, so good. Alright, let's try a different one. How about if I take negative square root of 10? Okay, again, 10 is not a perfect square, so this is going to be an irrational number. So take your square root of 10, and I get negative 3.2. So when I look up at my number line, this time negative 3.2 would be right about here. So I lie between negative 3 and negative 4. Now the only problem we've got is when I give you some really big numbers, because you'd have to have your number line taken all the way out. So let's say, for example, I wanted you to take the square root of 227. So this time the number line's not going to help us unless you can put your number line all the way out. So let's try 227 square root. So I get 15.1. Now I hope that maybe at this point you're starting to see a little bit of a pattern. So the first number is always whatever this unit is before the decimal. So 15. And then it is one more or one less, depending on if it's positive or negative. So 15.1 lies between positive 15 and positive 16. So can you see how we can take this skill and add it so that we're not using the number line? Alright, we're going to try two more. Let's take the negative square root of 862, and then I'm going to take the negative square root of 1. Actually 2. Let's do 2. 1's a perfect square, so there we go. I don't want him. Alright, so type in 862, take your square root, and I got negative 29.4. So again, we're going to try to do this one without the number line. So I know it lies between, my first digit is negative 29. Now, think in your head, it's more than 29, right? So it's negative 29 or negative 30. So this becomes your first number, and then think of it being one more than. Alright, you guys try negative square roots of 2, and then we'll go over the answer. Alright, so the square root of 2 was 1.4, and it's the opposite, so it's negative 1.4, so I'm hoping you put negative 1 and negative 2. Alright, so at the top of this example, this is for classwork 21 through 28. So again, if you're stuck, you have a reference point. Okay, last example. So now we're shifting gears. We're going to talk a little bit about right triangles. Okay? How can you tell if three numbers form a right triangle? We're going to use something called the Pythagorean theorem. So if you look at your formula sheet, the Pythagorean theorem is right here at the bottom. And it says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now I'm going to give you a hint, because I like to teach geometry. I'm going to ask you to learn Pythagorean backwards. And I just need you to trust me that this is going to help you a whole lot when you get to geometry. Alright, so we're going to learn Pythagorean as c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Now we're going to talk more about Pythagorean theorem when I get back on Monday. What I need you to know is that c is always the biggest number. A and b are your little numbers, and it doesn't matter which one you let a and which one you let b. the biggest number has to be the one to go by himself. Okay? Alright, so let's show you how this is all going to work. So example, what are we up to? 4. Do the following lengths make a right triangle? Now, they can do this a couple different ways. One thing they can do is they can label A, B, and C for you. That makes your life super easy because they tell you what's A, what's B, what's C. They can give you a picture or they can just give you 3 numbers. Alright, so we're going to practice it all the ways. So, think in mind that we need C squared equals A squared plus B squared. And what you're trying to do is find out, is this equation true with these numbers? So, what is C? C is 12. So take out C and put in 12 squared. Now, I'm going to take out my equal sign and I'm going to put in a little box because my question is, what goes in that box? Now, A squared, they said, was 9 squared plus 10 squared. Alright, let's work it out. 12 squared is 144. 9 squared is 81. And 10 squared is 100. Alright, one more step. 144 and 181. Is 144 equal to 181? No. So is the right triangle? No. Alright, and I actually want to see all your work. If all you do is put yes or no's, you're not going to get any credit. Alright, let me show you another way it can be asked. So this time let's try a picture. Now, a picture's going to be a little bit harder because they're not going to give you what's A, what's B, and what's C. Alright, we know we're doing C squared equals A squared plus B squared. The question is, which of my numbers is C? Because it's the only one that matters. A and B are okay, they can be whatever. So, I said C is what? The biggest number. So you got a 5, a 12, and a 13. Who's the biggest? 13. So do 13 squared, 5 squared, and 12 squared. Or you could do 12 and 5. That doesn't matter. Alright, let's work it out. So 13 squared is 169. 5 squared, 25. 12 squared, 144. Alright, let's add these together. So 25 and 144 is 169. 169 equals 169, so you would write yes. So far, so good? Alright, I'm going to give you one last one. Let's say we have 11, let's do 1.1, 3.5, and 2.6. 1.1, 3.5, and 2.6. Now this time I didn't give you a triangle, and I didn't give you A, B, and C. But you're not going to be bothered with that because you automatically know which one of these 3 numbers is C. Because what did I tell you about C? That C is the biggest number. Okay, so C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So my biggest number of these is 3.5. Now, does it matter which one I call A and which one I call B? Nope. So I'll do 2.6 squared plus 1.1 squared. Don't let the decimals bother you. They're no different than whole numbers. You got a calculator. So let's do 3.5 squared. Now this time, guys, when you're typing it in, you're doing 3.5 and you're hitting this button just automatic because you're not taking the square root, you're reversing it. So I get 12.25, 2.6 squared, 6.76, and 1.1 squared, 1.21. Alright, let's add these together. So 6.76 plus 1.21 gives me 7.97. So is 12.25 is not equal to, so then I would declare this one as a no. Alright, and that's today's lesson. So we've learned about square roots, we've learned how to tell if something is a right triangle. And remember, C is your biggest number, so find your biggest number. He's C, the other two are A and B, doesn't matter which is which. Okay? Up here, if you're stuck, this is your classwork number 29 through 36. Alright, so that's today's lesson. The substitute's now going to hand out the classwork worksheet. You're going to do the entire worksheet, and you're going to turn it in. So turn in at end of class. Please make sure you're working independently. You cannot work in groups. There's no need to. You can listen to your music at this point. If you finish with homework, you may start classwork once you turn it in. Okay? And I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. And please behave yourselves, do what you're supposed to do, and I will see you guys on Monday.